This is Elaine. Welcome to my coffee chat, that's really a tea chat, on 504. I was sitting here thinking, boy, I just know there are some burning questions out there about Section 504. We get a lot of calls and a lot of wonderful emails from you guys out there, which we love. Keep them coming. In the meantime, I thought, hey, why not answer a few questions on video here? So, first thing is, what is Section 504 anyway? Section 504 of what? Well, as it turns out, Section 504 is actually a very important piece of civil rights legislation. It deals with an anti-discrimination theme and is Section 504 of the 1973 Vocational and Rehabilitation Act. It also used to be implemented in businesses, and that's really where it started, where architecture sometimes needed to be adjusted if somebody needed to be able to fit a wheelchair through a doorway or something like that. And then very slowly it worked its way into schools. Now, in the schoolhouse, it's extremely common, and any public organization receiving public money is responsible for implementing Section 504. You may ask, what is the main difference between 504 and an IEP? Great question. The difference between 504 and an IEP is that an IEP primarily deals with specially designed instruction. We have very special instruction that needs to be provided in special ways in order for students to learn. Section 504 really isn't like that. Section 504 primarily deals with accommodations and modifications. It's really how can we make sure that a student has access to their learning, even though they don't need to be taught in a different way necessarily so they can learn. They do still have to be able to access their learning, and that really is what 504 is about. There are some three main ways that a student can qualify for Section 504. The main thing is that they have a physical or mental impairment that impacts one or more major life activities. And guess what? School is one of those activities. Learning is a major life activity. That is why school and learning applies to Section 504. They also could have a history of such an impairment or be regarded as having such an impairment. That's a little bit more complicated language, but really it means if a student has a disability, they pretty much automatically qualify for 504 if they need some special accommodations to access their environment. It kind of is challenging sometimes to figure out what we might need in order to qualify for a student for a 504 plan. It's not quite as clear as through IDEA. The deal is that we don't and actually can't require a medical statement. I want to say that again because this is the number one question that we get in our office about Section 504 plans. You can't require a medical statement from the parent in order to qualify the student. However, if the team feels that a medical statement is necessary in order to verify the student's disability, then we as a district have to support the parent in getting that medical statement, or we can ask to do some further evaluation. And then we would need to have the parent sign consent for evaluation, and we would need to get that going so we could decide as a team whether or not the student qualified. There is one disability that is the most common form of illness that we have that is associated with the 504 plan, and that is a student who has diabetes. A student who has diabetes automatically qualifies for a Section 504 plan. They also automatically qualify for a health management plan. For these meetings, it's very important that the nurse and the student's physician work closely together in order to identify all of the detailed medical information related to insulin administration and other instructional issues that may crop up as a result of the student needing to leave class in order to regulate their blood sugar. This is something that's really important because although a health management plan would take care of the medical part, the Section 504 plan that students automatically qualify also come with a number of protections that health management plans don't. For example, a student who has behavior challenges, and maybe even as a result of their diabetic blood sugar fluctuations, may actually need a behavior support plan, and they may actually at some point need to be disciplined. The same discipline safeguards are in place for students on a 504 plan as in an IEP. It's very, very similar. There's very few differences, including the manifestation determination process. And that is a really important piece to remember because sometimes we don't realize that students on a 504 plan get those same protections. They're very intense protections, and they oftentimes prevent the student from getting suspended or expelled. Another really kind of interesting fact about 504 is when we're considering eligibility, we cannot actually consider any sort of assistive devices or medication that a student may have in order to mitigate their disability. For example, we cannot say, oh, this student has been diagnosed with ADHD, and therefore, because they have medication that are mitigating their symptoms, we're actually not going to qualify them for a 504. Actually, what we have to do is imagine them not having their medication and then making our decision based upon that. That sometimes is really hard because students come to school medicated, and so we don't really know what they're like without their medication. However, we are not able to qualify or disqualify a student based upon their experience with medication. That is considered an assistive piece that we cannot look at as we're talking about eligibility. And if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to call us because it can be a little bit confusing sometimes. Another kind of interesting thing about 504 that you might want to think about is that there are some categories of conditions that are not covered by 504, and one of them is pregnancy. For our teen moms, sometimes when they are pregnant, we have requests for 504 plans. Unfortunately, pregnancy does not count as something that would originally qualify for a 504 plan. However, if there are medical complications that are related to pregnancy, or if there are bed rest issues, or if there sometimes are complications with pregnancy after the baby is born, in some situations, those can qualify. Students who are pregnant also have many rights under Title IX, which will be in a different coffee chat. One of the things that you might want to think about too is that temporary conditions can qualify for 504 plans. So, for example, if somebody has a really severe injury where they're in a wheelchair for an extended period of time, or they have a really severe impairment as a result of their injury, maybe somebody breaks both their arms falling or something like that, they can't write, they can't do school, they need a lot of accommodations in order to access their education, they would actually qualify for a 504. Another really common qualifying condition for a 504 is concussion. Most of us know what a concussion is like now and have had students that have been in that situation, particularly our athletes, or maybe students, heaven forbid, have been in something like a car accident. Concussions definitely qualify for Section 504, usually for a temporary period of time until the concussion is better. So that's something to kind of think about. Another question that we commonly get is, hey, do kids on 504 plans still need support and accommodations for after-school activities if they're involved in sports, or if there's something like a school dance or something like that? The answer is yes, they do. A good way to think about it is that anything that a general ed student typically has access to related to school usually applies to something that we would need to provide supports for in a 504 plan. That includes going to sporting events as an athlete, not necessarily as a spectator, but as an athlete, going to school dances, any school activities that are related to field trips or travel or anything like that. All of that applies to students who have a 504 plan, even if it's outside of instructional hours at school. Transportation sometimes needs to be provided. That's something that's really important. And also, even if a student's in private school, they still qualify for a 504 plan if they meet all of the requirements. And they also would be doing that probably via consultation from Hillsborough School District. Please do not hesitate to give us a call. too low.